Yeah, but you know, like how you like the first time you hit a home run, like that. You like always remember that, don't you?
Yeah, sticks out in memory, don't it?
Yeah, that's like what it was when my mom.
Witnessing his mother's brutal murder will leave you speechless.
It was one of the most notorious murders.
8-year-old Ricky Tokers lived a life many envied.
Hires a hitman to murder his wife.
With his younger brother, Mike, their loving mother, Sarah, and their father, Fred, a successful attorney, they were what most people considered the perfect family. Sarah was a stay-at-home mom, devoted to her kids, always there for them, showering them with love. Fred Tokers, a high-profile criminal defense attorney, seemed like the ideal father, but behind the surface, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. The Tokers family spent Thanksgiving of 1992 with Sarah's side of the family, the Ambroscos, in Florida. After a joyful reunion, Fred left early for a meeting in Alabama, while Sarah and the boys prepared to head back home. November 29, 1992, was a night that would forever change their lives. What should have been a peaceful return turned into a nightmare. Later that night, Ricky and Mike found themselves caught in a tragedy that would haunt them forever. Their perfect world shattered in an instant when Sarah was killed in front of them. It was November 25, 1992, when the Tokers family celebrated Thanksgiving with Sarah's family, the Ambroscos, in Florida. For years, this gathering had been a cherished tradition, filled with love and laughter. The family reunited, sharing stories and making memories, knowing they'd soon come together again for Christmas. However, things were about to take an unimaginable turn. Fred had to leave early for a meeting in Alabama, so he told Sarah he would head home separately. Sarah and the boys, Ricky and Mike, made preparations for their return to East Marietta, Georgia. As they said their goodbyes to the Ambroscos, the family was full of excitement for the upcoming holiday season. They sang, "I'll Be Home for Christmas," unaware that it would be their last goodbye. November 29, 1992, would mark the beginning of their darkest chapter. On November 29, 1992, after a long drive back home from Florida, Sarah Tokers and her 2 young boys, Ricky and Mike, arrived in her driveway late at night. Exhausted from the journey, Sarah left Mike asleep in the car while she helped Ricky and their dog, Jake, out the vehicle. It seemed like a normal night, but it would soon turn into a nightmare. As Sarah stepped into their dark home, a man suddenly appeared, blocking her way. The attacker, armed with a gun, ordered Sarah and the boys back outside. Ricky and Mike were terrified as the man kicked their dog away and forced them into their car. Sarah desperately pleaded for their safety, but the gunman wasn't listening. As they drove away, Ricky could see the gun pointed at his mother's head in the rearview mirror. The horror escalated quickly when the man shot Sarah in the head. Ricky recalls the moment as everything seemed to slow down, with the smell of gunpowder filling the air. The car veered off the road and stopped in a ditch. Ricky, in shock, tried to wake his mother, but she wouldn't respond. As Ricky sat frozen in the car, trying to wake his mother, he realized the unimaginable. Sarah was gone. Terrified and unsure of what to do, Ricky unbuckled his seatbelt and tried to help Mike out of the car. Covered in blood and desperate for help, the 2 boys noticed lights in the distance and instinctively ran toward them. They reached a neighbor's house where the man immediately called the police. Ricky and Mike, still in shock, told him their mother needed help. Authorities quickly arrived at the scene, confirming their worst fears. Sarah Tokers, only 39 years old, was dead. But even in her death, Sarah managed to protect her children. Earlier, she had hidden incriminating evidence of her husband's dangerous activities, including documents that would eventually expose the truth about her murder. These clues would eventually lead investigators to uncover the dark secrets of Fred Tokers and the horrific events that unfolded that night. As detectives began to investigate Sarah Tokers' murder, they turned their attention to Fred Tokers, Sarah's husband. Initially, he seemed like an innocent man, devastated by the loss of his wife. But the more they dug into his life, the more troubling details emerged. Fred, a successful criminal defense attorney, had kept his professional and personal life full of secrets. Sarah had grown suspicious of Fred's behavior in the years leading up to her death. She confided in her sister about strange occurrences, like Fred receiving mysterious phone calls at home, which he never answered. She also discovered a gun hidden under the floorboards of Fred's car, which only added to her growing fear. Sarah believed her husband's criminal ties were putting her family in danger. Despite her fears, Sarah didn't stay silent. She hired a private investigator who uncovered Fred's affair and evidence of illegal activities. Sarah kept these documents as insurance in case they ever divorced, warning her sister that if anything happened to her, the evidence should be handed to the police. Tragically, her worst fears came true, and these very documents would play a crucial role in exposing Fred Tokers as the mastermind behind her murder. As the investigation into Sarah Toker's murder progressed, detectives uncovered a chilling connection between Fred Tokers and a man named Eddie Lawrence. Eddie Lawrence had been one of Fred's business associates and had also sought Fred's legal services in the past. What started as a professional relationship quickly evolved into something far darker. Fred had been desperate to silence his wife, who had uncovered his criminal activities. Eddie, unable to carry out the murder himself, enlisted the help of a hitman, Curtis Rower, offering him $5,000 to kill Sarah. But when Eddie hesitated, questioning whether the murder was necessary, Fred insisted that Sarah knew too much to be allowed to live. Eventually, Fred made the fatal decision. Sarah had to die. Eddie couldn't go through with it, so he turned to Curtis Rower, the hired gun, to finish the job. Sarah's death wasn't just an act of violence. It was part of a calculated plan to protect Fred's dangerous secrets. This was the moment that turned Fred Tokers from a grieving husband to the cold-blooded mastermind behind his wife's tragic end. In the aftermath of Sarah Toker's murder, her two young sons, Ricky and Mike, were left to deal with the unimaginable trauma. Ricky, at just 6 years old, had witnessed the brutal killing of his mother and had narrowly escaped death himself. Despite his age, Ricky showed remarkable bravery as he became the key witness in the investigation. When police interviewed him, Ricky gave them the first crucial description of the gunman. Although he was scared and confused, he managed to recall details about the attacker, describing him as a black male with a pirate gun. The details were chilling, but they were also crucial in identifying the suspect. As the investigation unfolded, Ricky's courage was tested again when he had to testify in court. Ricky was called to take the stand in the trial against Curtis Rower, the hitman responsible for his mother's death. Despite the emotional weight, Ricky stood firm, recounting the horrors of that night with incredible clarity. His testimony helped secure Rower's conviction and was a pivotal moment in the long fight for justice. Ricky's bravery not only brought justice for his mother, but also ensured that the men responsible for her death would never hurt anyone again. After the trials and the arrests of Fred Tokers, Eddie Lawrence, and Curtis Rower, Ricky and his brother, Mike, were left to rebuild their lives. The two boys, now orphaned and traumatized by the events they had witnessed, found refuge with Sarah Toker's family, the Ambruscos. Ricky and Mike were taken in by their loving grandparents, who provided the stability and support they so desperately needed. Despite the heart-wrenching tragedy, Ricky found a way to move forward. He dedicated his life to helping others, starting his career as a lifeguard and later working as an EMT. The ocean and water sports became his passion, offering him both solace and purpose. He eventually worked in the surfing industry, a career that allowed him to live a life filled with new experiences and meaningful connections. Although he would never forget the pain of losing his mother and facing the betrayal of his father, Ricky chose not to let it define him. He moved forward with a strong sense of independence and peace, choosing to honor his mother's legacy by embracing life with those who loved him. Despite the darkness of his past, Ricky found joy in the future, surrounded by the family that kept him safe and supported him through his healing journey. You won't believe the shocking twists behind this heartbreaking story, but the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you don't miss our next video, the most twisted serial killer you've never heard of. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more gripping tales you can't afford to miss.